Luisa is 10 weeks pregnant with her first child and has been struggling with morning sickness. Nothing tastes right, except for her favorite avocado roll from the sushi place nearby. Luisa knows she isn't supposed to have raw fish, but is unsure whether that means all sushi is risky. She is already concerned about the half glass of wine she had at Thanksgiving before she knew she was expecting, and she just heard that the cup of coffee she enjoys every morning might be dangerous to the developing baby. She has started wondering whether her child will inherit her curly hair and height. On top of that, Luisa is interested in learning about home birth. When she suggested this, her mother insisted that she should give birth only in a hospital. At least she and her partner agree that they want only one biological child, and he will get a vasectomy after the baby's birth. Lately, he has been hesitant and nervous about the procedure and has questions about recovery. Like many expecting and new parents, she wonders, will the child look or behave more like her or her partner? What physical traits or health conditions that run in her family is her child likely to inherit? How dangerous is consumption of substances like alcohol, caffeine, or uncooked fish to a birthing parent and a developing fetus? Should birth take place in a hospital, at home, or somewhere else? How effective is a vasectomy as a method of family planning? In this chapter, you'll find out what current research says about questions like these and more. To say that Arjun is outgoing or extroverted would be an understatement. He thrives on time spent with others, loud parties, packed professional conferences, and crowded sports bars. His brother Ajay is more introverted and prefers quiet meals with his partner or a close friend, reading, and solo hikes. Despite their differences in personality, Arjun and Ajay have a strong physical resemblance. Their parents often wonder how their children can look so similar but have such distinct personalities when they have the same biological parents and grew up in the same home. To understand how human development occurs and how similarities and differences like those observed by Arjun and Ajay's parents arise, we need to examine the role of genetic inheritance, nature, environment and experiences, nurture, and the interplay between genetic and environmental effects, nurture and nature, connections between chromosomes, DNA, genes, genetic inheritance, inherited and genetic disorders, and the way our genetics and environments interact contribute to the similarities and individual differences observed across human development. Chromosomes, DNA, and genes. The first step in grasping the way genetics influence development is to understand chromosomes, DNA, and genes, and the way each functions within a cell, the focus of the field of molecular genetics. Cells duplicate themselves through a process of cell division called mitosis, which allows organisms to grow and replace old or damaged cells. Mitosis accounts for the replication of most types of cells in the body and ensures that each new cell includes all 46 chromosomes, organized in 23 pairs located in the cell nucleus. A chromosome is a rod-like structure in the cell nucleus composed of long molecules of DNA. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, molecules contain an individual's genetic information. They coil around each other to form a double helix, a twisted ladder-like structure, figure 2.2. A human sex cell, the reproductive cell called a gamete, holds only 23 chromosomes, one from each pair of parental chromosomes. These cells replicate through a different type of cell division called meiosis. During meiosis, a sex cell, whether an ovum in a female or a sperm cell in a male, splits into two new cells that each also contain only 23 chromosomes. Thus, gametes contain only half the genetic information of each parent, ensuring that after fertilization of the ovum, the resulting offspring will have a total of 46 chromosomes, 23 from the biological mother and 23 from the biological father. Which particular chromosomes these are is largely random. 8 million different combinations are possible, contributing to the wide genetic variation seen among humans. A human non-sex cell, called an autosome, is what is present in chromosome pairs 1 through 22. The 23rd pair, the sex chromosomes, may look the same or different, figure 2.3. The sex chromosomes are called the X and Y chromosomes based on their shapes. The combination of these chromosomes determines the child's sex at conception. X for a biological female, and XY for a biological male. Females have two X chromosomes, so each of their ova contains an X chromosome in the 23rd position. Males have both X and Y chromosomes, so each of their sperm cells contains one or the other, and thereby determines the baby's sex. Intersex is an umbrella term for people who have one or more of a range of variations in sex characteristics or chromosomal patterns that do not fit the typical conceptions of male or female. The prefix means between and refers here to an apparent biological state between male and female. There are many causal factors that can make a person intersex. These are often referred to as differences in sex development, DSD, though there is debate over which DSDs make a person intersex. Genetically, the baby may have a different number of sex chromosomes. Rather than two X chromosomes associated with females, or one X and one Y chromosome associated with males. Babies are sometimes born with an alternative number of sex chromosomes, such as XO, only one chromosome, or XXY, 3 chromosomes. In other cases, hormonal activity, or even chance occurrences in the womb, can affect the baby's anatomy. The number of people born intersex has been expressed to be as high as 1.7% of births. However, based on different interpretations of what makes someone intersex, you may see other statistics or ranges quoted. Fausto Sterling, 2000. Becker, Chin and Bates, 2022. While some conditions or disorders associated with being intersex may require treatment or intervention, being intersex is not a disorder. The intersex community and many medical groups view surgery to support the assignment of an infant to a specific sex to be unethical and even abusive. For example, medical ethicist Kevin Behrens, 2020, argues that surgical interventions for intersex children should only be carried out when surgery serves the best medical interests of the child. The most commonly occurring 23rd chromosome pairings are XX and XY, National Organization for Rare Disorders (ND), Genetic and Rare Diseases Information Center (ND). However, differences may occur during cell division that result in aneuploidy, an atypical number of autosomal or sex chromosomes that may result in various syndromes. Gottlieb et al., 2023. Skuse et al., 2018. Table 2.1. Our genetic inheritance is carried in the genes that make up our chromosomes. A gene is a segment of DNA that contains the instructions for making proteins that regulate the structure and functioning of the body. It's estimated that humans have between 20,000 and 25,000 genes. National Human Genome Research Institute, 2022. The rungs of the chromosome's ladder-like structure, which house the DNA sequence, consist of 4 nucleic acid bases: guanine G, adenine A, thymine T, and cytosine C. These nucleic acids pair up in specific ways. Klug et al., 2016. However, not all of our genes code for proteins. Some regulate gene expression or how genes work and interact with each other. The complete sequence of an organism's DNA is called its genome. Each human being shares about 99.9% of their genome with all other humans on the planet. The remaining 0.01% contributes to the differences we observe in physical and behavioral differences, as well as the variations in our risk of developing certain types of diseases. Duello et al., 2021, National Human Genome Research Institute, 2022. Genetic inheritance. Have you ever wondered why you share some physical characteristics with your biological parents but not others? Maybe you have your mother's freckles, or perhaps a different eye color than either of your parents. How do these similarities and differences occur? Recall that humans receive 23 chromosomes, each from their biological parents' sperm and ovum. During fertilization, these chromosomes fuse to create one cell with 23 pairs of chromosomes, each carrying 2 copies of each gene. The particular composition of the genes we inherit makes up our unique genotype, which cannot be directly observed. Some genes have a slightly different alternate forms, called an allele, and the specific alleles in our genotype can lead to differences in gene expression. National Human Genome Research Institute, 2022. These differences, in turn, result in a different phenotype or set of characteristics that can be observed, such as hair or eye color. Biological parents may both give their child the same allele, or each parent may contribute a different allele. The genes for certain traits, such as eye color, have both dominant and recessive alleles. If an allele is dominant, we need to inherit only one copy of it for the dominant trait, such as brown eyes, to be observed. However, we need 2 copies of a recessive allele, such as that for blue eyes, for the recessive trait to be observed. This pattern of inheritance is called the recessive/dominant pattern. If a child inherits the same eye color allele from both parents, the child is considered homozygous for this trait. The child who inherits different eye color alleles from both parents is heterozygous for this trait. Figure 2.4. Another inheritance pattern for traits such as hair texture, skin color, and height demonstrates incomplete or partial dominance, which occurs when an individual is heterozygous for a particular trait and neither allele is completely dominant or recessive. The result is incomplete dominance, an intermediate phenotype in which both alleles are expressed. Figure 2.5. For instance, if one parent is homozygous for curly hair and the other is homozygous for straight hair, incomplete dominance will result in the child having wavy hair, because alleles for both straight and curly hair are simultaneously expressed. Omoto and Lurquin, 2004. For other traits, a codominant inheritance pattern holds. With a codominant trait, an individual inherits both alleles of a gene, and each is fully expressed. National Human Genome Research Institute, 2024. For example, the ABO blood group has 3 alleles, A, B, and O, all encoded by the same gene. A child will inherit one of these alleles from each parent, which results in one of 4 possible phenotypes, A, B, AB, or O, commonly known as your blood type. Dean, 2005, Figure 2.6. Another factor that can influence the way genes are expressed is whether they are located on the X chromosome, meaning they are X-linked. Figure 2.7. For example, the genes identified for red-green colorblindness, a recessive trait, are located on the X chromosome. Biological males are more frequently affected than biological females by recessive X-linked traits, such as red-green colorblindness. Females need to receive the recessive allele for this trait from both biological parents, whereas males need to receive it only from their biological mother. The traits described rely on one or a few genes, but the vast majority of physical, behavioral, and health traits are a type of polygenic trait, meaning they are governed by multiple genes. Together, the effects of all the individual genes add up to create the observed phenotype. Scientists are beginning to identify which combinations of genes are associated with a range of complex traits and diseases, such as cognitive ability, major depressive disorder, type 2 diabetes, and coronary heart disease. Tam et al., 2019. Not all the phenotypic variation observed is accounted for by genes. However, environmental factors also contribute to the expression of a trait. Complex traits and diseases are likely a result of multifactorial inheritance. That is, their occurrence depends on both genetic and environmental factors. In addition, a single gene can influence multiple traits and produce a variety of phenotypic outcomes, a characteristic referred to as pleiotropy. Figure 2.8. For example, PKU, phenylketonuria, is a single-gene recessive disorder. This mutation results in the ineffective metabolism of phenylalanine, found in milk and other foods, bringing about a variety of issues if untreated, such as cognitive disability, eczema, and delayed growth. El-Hawari et al., 2022. Targum and Lang, 2010. Another type of pleiotropic effect occurs when genes referred to as generalist genes affect different but related phenotypes. For example, the same genetic variants are shared across verbal and nonverbal cognitive abilities, Bearden and Glahn, 2017. And shared genetic variants are indicated across several psychiatric disorders. Cross-disorder group of the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium, 2019. Inherited and genetic disorders. Genes contribute to all aspects of human development, functioning, and trait expression, including inherited and genetic disorders. There are 3 main types of genetic disorders: single gene disorders, chromosomal disorders, and multifactorial inherited disorders. A single gene disorder occurs in a single gene and can happen in 2 ways. 1. Individuals may inherit a pair of recessive alleles responsible for a disorder. Or 2. Mutations to the DNA sequence can result spontaneously from errors during cell division or from exposure to environmental toxins or other hazards such as X-rays or pollution. Mutations occur when the DNA sequence of a gene is altered. This can occur in a variety of ways, but most commonly through a change in a single nucleic acid base pairing substitution. Examples of single gene disorders include PKU, Tay-Sachs disease, cystic fibrosis, and sickle cell anemia. Table 2.2. A chromosomal disorder is due to errors during cell division and result in structural or numerical abnormalities. Structural abnormalities occur when sections within a chromosome are deleted, duplicated, or inverted. A section of the chromosome flips its orientation, or when sections are rearranged within or across the chromosome pairs. Numerical abnormalities happen during cell division and result in one of the 23 chromosome pairs containing only one chromosome, monosomy, or having an extra chromosome, trisomy. For example, individuals with Down syndrome will have 3 21st chromosomes rather than 2, Figure 2.9. Because each chromosome contains a large number of genes, deviation in chromosome number, more or less than 2, will affect a range of characteristics. A disorder resulting from multifactorial inheritance occurs when both polygenic effects, controlled by many genes, and environmental effects contribute to a phenotype. Studies have identified several genes that contribute to the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, autism spectrum disorder, and anxiety disorders. Dickerson and Dickerson, 2023. Genovese and Butler, 2023. Lee et al., 2024. National Human Genome Research Institute, 2020b. Many of these disorders are also influenced by multiple genes and a range of environmental influences, such as the prenatal environment, nutrition, socio-environmental experiences, and environmental conditions. Known inherited and genetic disorders can be screened for before pregnancy, prenatally, and shortly after birth. Table 2.2 offers an overview of some of these disorders. Gene-environment intersections. Genetic research has helped us understand human traits that rely on one or two genes. However, most human traits, such as personality traits, are more complex and result from a combination of genetic, nature, and environmental nurture influences. Understanding how, and how much, genes and environments influence gene expression together is the focus of the field of behavioral genetics. As described in 1.2 Themes of Development, heritability estimates indicate the degree to which genetics contribute to individual differences for a trait within a population. A high heritability estimate, near 100%, indicates that genetic effects explain a lot of variability within a population. A low heritability, closer to 0%, indicates that most of the variability is environmental. Mayhew and Mayer, 2017. Table 2.3. The goal of behavioral genetics is to explain 100% of the observed variance for a trait. Interpreting a heritability estimate also reveals to what degree environmental influences account for differences in a trait. For example, the heritability of intelligence is 50%, which means that genetics explains half the observed differences in this complex trait, and the remaining 50% is due to environmental effects. Note that heritability is a population statistic and cannot be applied to a specific individual. In other words, heritability can't tell you how much your intelligence is due to the specific genes you inherited. Consider the examples in Table 2.3. Heritability helps us understand the magnitude of individual genetic and environmental effects on a complex trait. But how do genes and environments work together to create the range of phenotypes observed for traits like personality or depression? The answer involves exploring the way genetic and environmental effects are intertwined via epigenetic effects, gene and environment interactions, G times E, and gene and environment correlations, RGE, and epigenetic effects. Epigenetics. As you learned in 1.2 Themes of Development, epigenetics investigates the way environments, experiences, and behaviors influence the expression of inherited genes without altering the DNA sequence of those genes. National Human Genome Research Institute, 2022. How do epigenetic effects influence gene expression? One common way gene expression is regulated is by the addition and removal of chemical tags through the process of DNA methylation, Figure 2.10. The addition of methyl groups to the nucleotide bases of the gene prevents expression of or silences the gene. Conversely, when a methyl group is removed from the nucleotide bases of the gene, it increases gene expression. Moore et al., 2012, Villicagna and Bell, 2021. Epigenetic effects can be activated by chemical and environmental exposures, such as lead, air and water pollutants, PCBs and BPA, diet and food availability, such as lack of folate or prenatal malnutrition, lifestyle habits, such as smoking, high alcohol consumption, stress, and exercise, and a range of drug treatments. Tarano et al., 2016. These can occur throughout the lifespan and are linked to increased risks for chronic illness and disease, and development of mental and physical health issues. Early studies of epigenetic effects examined the records of children whose mothers were pregnant during the Dutch famine of 1944-1945 during World War II. Heijmans et al., 2008. Prenatal exposure to the famine was linked to a greater risk for the development of type 2 diabetes and heart disease later in life. DeRuch et al., 2021. The children of mothers exposed to prenatal famine were larger at birth. while the children of fathers exposed to prenatal famine were heavier in adulthood. DeRoy et al., 2021. These studies indicate that epigenetic effects may be transmitted to future generations. More recent investigations have focused on the effects of early childhood stress exposure. In children who had experienced earlier traumatic events, often called adverse childhood experiences, epigenetic effects were observed in areas of the brain that control the stress response. These children were more reactive to stress, even low levels, and more prone to depression and anxiety due to the epigenetic changes identified. Turecki and Meany, 2016. Whether epigenetic effects are passed to the next generation in humans is just beginning to be examined. Although the chemical tags connected to epigenetic effects are usually removed during gamete production, research suggests some can be passed to future generations in animals. Gillette et al., 2018. Regardless of whether epigenetic effects are passed to the next generation, providing health services and nutritional support to pregnant individuals, infants, and toddlers can reduce preventable illnesses, with long-lasting implications that occur through epigenetic mechanisms. National Scientific Council on the Developing Child, 2010. For example, improved healthcare, exercise, and nutritional resources may serve as important environmental epigenetic factors that can improve mental and physical health. Nutrition and exercise show promise as protective factors in reducing risks of metabolic disease and other health risks. Abraham et al., 2023. Beck-2024. Genotype times environment interactions. Another way genes and environments work together to create a phenotype is through a genotype times environment interaction. In these events, the effect of the genotype nature on a phenotype, observed trait, depends on our environment nurture. In other words, some genes will have an effect only under certain environmental conditions. A classic example of a genotype times environment interaction is PKU. Wideman, 2009. Recall that PKU is a recessive disorder but will negatively affect development only if a low phenylalanine diet isn't followed. A genetic risk, two affected alleles, must interact with a high-risk environment, a high phenylalanine diet, for the PKU phenotype to occur. Other gene times environment interaction models indicate that some genotypes may show differential susceptibility, which means they are sensitive to both protective and risk environments. A group of adolescent males with the short allele of a certain gene associated with serotonin reported more depressive episodes when experiencing lower family support, and fewer episodes with more family support. However, this interaction was not found for the long allele of this gene. Lee et al., 2013. As mentioned in Chapter 1, Lifespan, Psychology, and Developmental Theories, there are several types of genotype-environment correlations, which indicates that our genes and environments are not randomly distributed, but are instead connected. Gene and environment correlations. The understanding of how gene and environment interact suggests that our genes play a role in shaping our environments and experiences. Three types of genotype-environment correlations, RGEs, are evident across the lifespan: passive, evocative, and active. Plomin et al., 1977. Scar and McCartney, 1983. A passive genotype-environment correlation occurs when biological parents provide both the genes and environment for children. Therefore, children inherit a genotype that covaries, or varies in correlation with, their family's environment. For example, if your inherited genes predispose you for musical ability, and you are raised by biologically related caregivers, you are also likely to be provided a family environment that supports musicality. For example, the father already had a drum set, and the mother regularly plays ukulele. This type of genotype-environment correlation is observed during infancy and early childhood when children have little control over their environment. An evocative or reactive genotype-environment correlation is evident when an individual's genetically influenced traits or behaviors evoke a response from those around them. In other words, people evoke environmental effects that covary with their genetic predispositions. For example, an inclination for musical ability will likely be noticed by a music teacher, who works with the individual challenging music pieces and encourages trying out for the school orchestra. Evocative genotype-environment correlations steadily occur across the lifespan, from infancy through late adulthood. An active genotype-environment correlation is present when our genes influence the experiences and environments an individual seeks out or selects to match their genetic predispositions. In other words, people construct environments that covery with their genotypes. This effect is also referred to as niche picking, which means we actively choose the environment, niche, where we feel most comfortable. In this example, you recognize your musical ability and select environments and experiences that allow you to pursue personal and professional opportunities connected to music. Active genotype environments increase over the lifespan as individuals gain more control over their environment. The interplay between genes and environment is challenging to untangle. For any given human behavior, multiple connections and mutual influences between genotypes and environments work together to create the similarities and differences observed across human behavior. Figure 2.11. Alex and his husband Brian share a dream of having a family of their own. Aware that they may face challenges, they research options and seek advice from friends and family. Ultimately, the couple decides to explore assisted reproduction and surrogacy. They attend fertility clinics, consult with specialists, and determine that they will use Alex's sperm due to a genetic disorder on Brian's side. The final step is meeting with potential surrogates. Each step is accompanied by its share of uncertainties. After a series of hopeful moments and a few heart-wrenching setbacks, Alex and Brian finally receive the news they have been yearning for. They are expecting a child. The organs and hormones that make up the reproductive systems of biological males and females work to create a new human being. Whether the biological parents conceive on their own, use reproductive assistance, or engage a surrogate or sperm or egg donation. Puberty determines when reproductive systems are mature enough to create, and, in the case of biological females, to support the growth of another life. In this section, you will learn about the basic components of the reproductive systems and how conception occurs. The female and male reproductive systems. The biological male and female reproductive systems have many similarities. Both males and females have gonads, testes or ovaries, and both produce gametes, sperm or ova. Further, both reproductive systems have similar internal features that allow for gametes to be transported. The fallopian tubes and vas deferens, as well as external features that facilitate sexual intercourse and orgasm. Penis and vulva. Figure 2.12. The female reproductive system. The main components of the female reproductive system are the ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, cervix, and vagina. The ovaries contain ova, or eggs, which are gamete cells carrying the genetic information of the biological female. Biological females have 2 ovaries, one on each side of the uterus. Each fallopian tube runs from an ovary to the uterus and transports fertilized ova to the uterus. The uterus, also called the womb, is the organ in which the fetus develops. At the lower end of the uterus is the cervix, which connects the uterus with the vagina, the muscular canal that leads to the outside of the body. The vagina is not visible on the outside of the body. However, the vulva, consisting of the external aspects of the female reproductive system, including the labia, clitoris, and vaginal opening, is visible. Most biological females experience a menstrual cycle, a monthly process of hormonal shifts that make conception possible, lasting approximately 28 days. This cycle has 3 phases: follicular, ovulatory, and luteal. During the follicular phase, several eggs develop until one or more is released in a process called ovulation. Ovulation typically happens around the 14th to the 16th day of a cycle. Day 1 of each cycle is the first day of the preceding period, although much variation in the timing exists among individuals. Grieger and Norman, 2020. During the luteal phase, the uterus creates a layer called the endometrium, which is rich with nutrients to help sustain a fertilized egg. If the egg is not fertilized, it dissolves, and the endometrial lining of the uterus is shed during menstruation. The cycle then begins again. The male reproductive system. The major parts of the male reproductive system are the testes, penis, vas deferens, urethra, and ejaculatory ducts. Refer to Figure 2.12. These components help create and maintain the health of sperm, which are the male gametes that merge with ova during fertilization, causing conception. The male reproductive system also assists in the introduction of sperm into the female reproductive tract during intercourse. The top of the penis marks the beginning of the male urethra, which releases sperm at the moment of ejaculation, or male orgasm. For conception to occur during vaginal intercourse, the penis and urethra must deposit sperm into the vagina. The scrotum is located below the penis and contains the testes, which produce sperm and testosterone. The vas deferens transports sperm from the testes to the urethra. Near the back of each testis is the epididymis, a tube that stores sperm until they are mature. During any type of sexual activity, sperm is moved from the epididymis via the vas deferens and ejaculatory duct to the urethra. The urethra in males and females is also responsible for releasing urine. However, increased blood flow from arousal prevents urine from flowing through the urethra during sexual activity. Conception. The union of sperm and ovum or gametes to create a new organism is called conception. Figure 2.13. For conception to occur, the gametes from a biological male and female must meet. This occurs most commonly during vaginal intercourse when sperm is ejaculated into the vagina. The release of the egg is mediated by hormones, specifically luteinizing hormone. A hormone is a chemical released by glands within the human body that alters and controls aspects of bodily function. If an egg is fertilized, it typically travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus, where it implants into the uterine wall and eventually develops into an embryo before eventually developing into a fetus. The female's body also releases the hormone progesterone, or it is provided if using fertility treatments, which helps thicken the endometrial lining and is necessary for successful implantation of the fertilized egg and thereby pregnancy. Once sperm enter the vagina, they travel through the cervix and cervical mucus to reach the uterus. Sperm encounter acidic conditions in the vagina and create a coating that protects them and helps them to survive in that environment. Suarez and Pacey, 2005. Sperm that survive the journey to the uterus will be directed toward the fallopian tubes via contractions in the uterus. Sperm can survive up to 5 days within the female reproductive system, though the egg is able to be fertilized for only about 12 hours after release. University of California, San Francisco Health, 2024. Many sperm will travel to the fallopian tubes to reach the egg, but only one sperm can penetrate it. Suarez and Pacey, 2005. Once fertilization occurs, the egg becomes impenetrable and the remaining sperm die off. Pathways to parenthood. For people to conceive, the likelihood of achieving pregnancy varies due to multiple factors, including the age, fertility, and health of the biological parents. Many people conceive without actively planning or intending to. Still others take direct steps to delay or prevent pregnancy. Many couples can get pregnant within 1 year of trying to conceive, but only about 30% of people under age 30 years get pregnant during the first 3 months. Taylor, 2003, WHO, 2024. If someone has been trying to conceive for at least 1 year without success, they may have fertility challenges. Today's medical professionals can assist many people with fertility concerns. Many types of families, including single individuals and individuals in same-sex relationships, have pathways to parenthood including assisted reproductive technology, ART, or the use of donor eggs and/or sperm. For those who do not wish to undergo such treatments, or for whom the treatments aren't successful, other routes to parenthood include surrogacy and adoption. These options are expensive, however, and are often not covered by insurance. Causes of infertility. The clinical term infertility describes a condition in which someone has not successfully conceived after trying for at least 1 year. According to research, approximately 15% of females and 11 to 12% of males have some form of infertility. Boramandenia et al., 2022. Nugent and Chandra, 2024. The cause may be fertility issues in the female, the male, or both parties, or unknown causes. Boramandia et al., 2022. Nugent and Chandra, 2024. Many fertility challenges can be addressed medically. However, success of those treatments varies among individuals. Male infertility can be caused by hormonal irregularity and blockages within any of the organs of the male reproductive system. Or, the sperm may have low motility, preventing them from moving effectively and traveling through the female reproductive tract. Leslie et al., 2024. However, nearly half of all cases of male infertility occur from unknown causes. Leslie et al., 2024. Intersections and contexts. Access to fertility treatments across the globe. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, at least 1 in 6 individuals across the globe deals with infertility at some point in their life. World Health Organization, 2024. Fertility problems do not discriminate. They can affect individuals at all income levels, all ethnicities, and all ages. What does differ among those dealing with infertility, however, is access to fertility treatments. World Health Organization, 2024. According to Fauser et al., 2019, 2024. Collecting data about fertility treatments globally has been difficult until recently, because not all nations publish data on their number of fertility centers or assisted reproduction procedures. Most procedures are performed in Asia and Europe, possibly because the associated costs are lower in these regions. Some countries in Europe, such as Denmark, may financially help individuals with the cost of fertility treatments. Africa appears to have the fewest facilities and procedures, possibly due to underreporting, because only 40 fertility centers from 13 of the continent's 54 countries participated in data collection. Fauser et al. 2019. Fauser et al. 2024. Practitioners of fertility treatments in the United States perform half as many procedures as their European colleagues and charge the highest fees, which are typically not covered by insurance. In vitro fertilization, IVF, a medical intervention to aid in producing a successful pregnancy, can cost more than $15,000 per attempt in the United States. In some countries, age may also be a barrier to fertility treatments. Sweden does not allow women over 42 years of age to use these methods, and women from Denmark lose access at age 46 years. Fauser et al. 2019. Not only can IVF treatments be expensive, but they can also be time-intensive, requiring many visits for lab work, and they may involve physical discomfort. This makes the process difficult to take on several levels, even when it is available. In many parts of the world, especially in rural areas, the distance to the nearest fertility clinic may be prohibitive as well. So while medical ART and the understanding of fertility have grown dramatically, there remains unequal access to helpful resources. Some common fertility problems for females are blocked fallopian tubes, uterine abnormalities, endometriosis, and polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, the most frequent challenge. In PCOS, a hormone imbalance results in higher levels of androgens, sex hormones, that can also cause small cysts on the ovaries and irregular menstruation. Rocha et al. 2019. The fallopian tubes can become blocked for many reasons, including from scar tissue from previous surgery, infections, sexually transmitted diseases, fibroids, and endometriosis. Ambildhuke et al. 2022. Uterine fibroids are abnormal, non-cancerous growths that may be hereditary and are sensitive to estrogen and progesterone. Though the cause of fibroids is not known, several factors increase the risk of developing them, including family history, obesity, early onset of menstruation, heavy drinking, and race, given that fibroids tend to occur more frequently in Black women. Office on Women's Health, 2021. Endometriosis is a painful condition in which the uterine lining, the endometrium, grows outside the uterus. In PCOS, a hormone imbalance results in higher levels of androgens, sex hormones, that can also cause small cysts on the ovaries, and irregular menstruation. Rocha et al., 2019. Many of these fertility problems can be detected early and treated through advances in RT fertility treatments. Most fertility treatments rely on ART. Pakmov et al., 2021. Some of the most common are ovulation induction, intrauterine insemination, and IVF. Ovulation induction uses medications to stimulate ovulation in individuals who are not ovulating regularly. A doctor will assess the eggs using an intrauterine ultrasound on the 10th or 11th day of the menstrual cycle. Once the eggs are mature, an injection of human chorionic gonadotrophin, HCG, will be used to stimulate ovulation. Sharma and Balasundaram, 2022. Intrauterine insemination, IUI, is often helpful when a low sperm count or weak sperm is an issue, or when single individuals or same-sex couples wish to conceive. After ovulation occurs, sperm are placed directly into the uterus. A process called washing ensures the healthiest sperm provided are used. Alabadia, 2017. The process of in vitro fertilization, IVF, combines sperm with one or more eggs from a biological female in a laboratory and allows them to divide for a time before placing one or more fertilized eggs into the uterus of the patient undergoing treatment. Pakimov et al., 2021. All these fertility treatments carry some risks. For example, when using fertility drugs to stimulate egg production, individuals may experience mild side effects, bloating, nausea, hot flashes, or more severe side effects such as ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, painful swelling of the ovaries, and an increased chance of ectopic pregnancies, in which the embryo implants within the fallopian tube instead of the uterus. Pakimov et al., 2021. The use of fertility drugs for these procedures also increases the likelihood of carrying twins or triplets. Finally, higher rates of preterm births, low birth weight, and birth defects, such as spinal bifida, congenital heart issues, cerebral palsy, are associated with ART. Von Wolf and Hoff, 2020. Surrogacy and adoption. Some people experiencing infertility may consider surrogacy or adoption. Figure 2.14. In surrogacy, those who wish to become parents partner with someone who is willing to carry a fetus and give birth. Surrogates typically undergo IVF to become pregnant. However, in some cases, it is possible for them to become pregnant using IUI, intrauterine insemination, which allows sperm to be placed directly in the uterus. The implanted embryo may result from the egg and sperm of the couple desiring to be parents, or from donor eggs and/or sperm. Some people use agencies to help them find suitable surrogates, and remuneration and coverage of medical expenses are typically included in the legal contract between the surrogate and the prospective parents. Individuals and couples can also adopt children whose biological parents have voluntarily placed them for adoption or lost their parental rights. Adoption often takes place with the assistance of adoption agencies. Individuals can also foster children through foster care systems in many countries. These children may or may not be eligible for adoption when the placement happens, or they may become eligible later. Other forms of adoption include familial adoption, in which a child is adopted by a relative, and international adoption. International adoption may bring unique challenges depending on qualifications potential parents must meet to adhere to government policies. Unintended pregnancies. According to the United Nations Population Fund, approximately 121 million unintended pregnancies occur worldwide each year. Baker et al., 2022. These happen for multiple reasons, including lack of access to contraceptives, reproductive care, and/or education and sex education, sexual violence against females, and cultural norms suggesting that women need to have children. Baker et al., 2022. In the United States, around 40% of all pregnancies are reported as being unintended. CDC 2024. However, the number varies dramatically across different groups. Adolescent pregnancies in those aged 15 to 19 years account for the majority of unintended pregnancies. Women between 18 and 24 years of age who had incomes at or below poverty level, did not complete high school, and were Hispanic or Black also had high numbers of unintended pregnancies. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2024. Is pregnancy prevention common knowledge? A recent report from the United Nations Population Fund estimated that at least half of all pregnancies worldwide each year are unintended. Baker et al., 2022. This means millions of women are conceiving who did not plan to get pregnant. According to Barak et al., 2020, around 61% of unintended pregnancies worldwide in women between ages 15 and 49 years end in abortions that are unsafe, illegal, or both. In developing countries, unsafe abortions resulted in nearly 200,000 maternal deaths between 2003 and 2009. They also forced the hospitalization of 7 million women and likely cost more than $550 million in follow-up treatment. Barak et al., 2020. Among the reasons for unintended pregnancies globally are misinformation about contraception and lack of access to contraceptive methods and education. Many young people all over the world depend on friends for advice about preventing pregnancy, because discussing the topic with family can be difficult. Without access to sex education, myths and misinformation abound, including the idea that contraceptives, such as birth control pills or intrauterine devices, IUDs, may harm future fertility or decrease sexual desire, that early withdrawal or urination after intercourse prevents conception, that certain positions may decrease the chance of conceiving, and that avoiding intercourse around the time of ovulation prevents pregnancy. Lunsberg et al., 2014. Moisaka et al., 2020. Lunsberg et al., 2014, found that more than 40% of U.S. women in their study did not know when ovulation typically occurs. These and other misconceptions can be dispelled with sex education and increased access to information about contraception. According to Lunsberg et al., 2014, most women in their study said they would ask their women's health care provider about pregnancy, followed by websites. However, most admitted not asking their provider any questions. Though many had concerns about their fertility, pregnancy and conception were thought to be private and awkward to discuss. Providing more access to sex education and to contraceptives may help decrease the high number of unintended pregnancies globally, as well as making sex education more common. Birth control and family planning. The use of contraception, a method to prevent conception, has been steadily increasing each year on every continent except Oceania and North America, although North America reports the highest use of contraception of all continents. Ponce de Leon et al., 2019. The largest increase in contraceptive use occurred in Africa, although there it remains the lowest rate of all continents. Ponce de Leon et al., 2019. That increase has been slow, likely due to limits on contraceptive choices. lack of access to reproductive health services for individuals living at or below the poverty level, cultural or religious resistance, and even bias against some methods among reproductive health providers. WHO 2023. In the United States, common forms of contraception include birth control pills, oral contraceptives, IUDs, birth control implants, contraceptive patches, injections of hormones such as Depo-Provera, external condoms, and vasectomy. Other less commonly used forms include internal condoms, spermicides, and sponges or diaphragms. Currently, the only form of permanent birth control available to males is vasectomy. Vasectomies are one of the most effective forms of birth control and carry a very low risk of negative side effects compared to all other contraception types. Araujo et al., 2022. While people sometimes have anxiety about this procedure, evidence indicates vasectomy is safe and does not negatively affect sexual function. Yang et al., 2020. Each type of contraception has a different level of effectiveness and different side effects. Table 2.4. When Olivia learned in August that they were pregnant, they joyfully anticipated the arrival of a baby the following April and hoped the baby might share their late father's birthday. Olivia didn't know the exact date of conception because they had been trying to conceive for several months, so the obstetrician used the first day of the last menstrual period and added 2 weeks, given that ovulation typically occurs mid-cycle. However, Olivia's doctor warned her that pregnancies can vary in length and that very few births occur on the baby's due date. De Klerk et al., 2023. Pregnancies are often divided into 3-month periods called trimesters. However, 3 developmental periods also occur, each marked by major changes and occurring on a different schedule than the trimesters. Figure 2.15. Each developmental period of pregnancy involves important aspects of maternal and paternal health that can influence the health of the pregnancy, environmental factors that can affect the health of an embryo or fetus during pregnancy, and education and behaviors parents can optimize to ensure a healthy pregnancy. Prenatal development and viability. The 3 major developmental periods of pregnancy are the germinal period, the embryonic period, and the fetal period. Significant development changes occur during all of these stages, and during the last, the fetus becomes viable outside the womb. Complications, such as exposure to teratogens and congenital disorders, may occur during fetal development, the germinal period. As you've learned, conception occurs when a sperm cell enters the ovum and the 23 chromosomes in each of the 2 cells combine, creating a unique new combination of 46 chromosomes. The single cell formed at conception is called a zygote. The first and shortest of the 3 developmental periods of pregnancy is the germinal period. It starts at conception and lasts approximately 2 weeks. The zygote starts to divide within 24 hours of forming, and around 5 to 7 days later, it is a small cluster of a few hundred cells called a blastocyst. About a week after conception, the blastocyst starts to form burr-like projections, which help it implant in the uterus after it travels down the fallopian tube. Cell differentiation starts during the germinal period as well. Cell differentiation is the process in which stem cells, guided by genes, start to specialize or take on characteristics of what they will later become, such as organs, nails, hair, or skin. This is the start of the blastocyst's transformation into an embryo. One end of the blastocyst turns into the embryoblast, which will eventually become the embryo. The rest develops into a life support system for the embryo, consisting of the placenta, umbilical cord, amnion, and chorion. The germinal period is also the time during which twins and other multiples are conceived. Figure 2.16. Fraternal or dizygotic twins develop when 2 ova are fertilized at the same time. In the case of identical or monozygotic twins, for reasons still not completely understood, the zygote splits into 2 clusters of cells, creating 2 genetically identical zygotes. Hall, 2021. In pregnancies that are not due to fertility treatments, there is a 0.4% chance of having monozygotic twins. Roberts et al., 2018. That chance increases to a 1.57 to 5.6% chance in pregnancies utilizing IVF and other fertility treatments, possibly due to medications and laboratory procedures employed in the IVF process. Roberts et al., 2018. By the end of the germinal period, the blastocyst has traveled through the fallopian tube to the uterus, where it implants into the uterine wall. This process is called implantation. Successful implantation is not guaranteed, and it's estimated that 15% of pregnancies are lost before or during this process. Jarvis, 2020. It is difficult to develop methods to correctly assess the success of implantation without knowing the exact date of conception. The embryonic period. Once implantation has occurred, the blastocyst becomes an embryo, and the embryonic period begins. This period lasts from the 3rd to the 8th week of pregnancy. An enormous number of changes happen during this period. After implantation, part of the embryo rapidly forms 4 major support structures: the amnion, chorion, placenta, and umbilical cord. The amnion or amniotic sac is a watertight sac that protects the embryo and is filled with amniotic fluid. The chorion gathers nourishment for the embryo and eventually becomes the lining of the placenta. The placenta is a temporary organ connecting the uterus to the umbilical cord that provides respiration and nourishment for the embryo, in addition to eliminating metabolic wastes. The umbilical cord is a flexible tube connecting the embryo and the placenta. It contains 3 types of blood vessels that carry nutrients and oxygen from the birth mother to the embryo and transport waste from the embryo to the placenta. Heel and Bordoni, 2022. Other changes occurring during the embryonic period include organogenesis, or the formation of organs. Ongoing cell differentiation allows cells to become specialized to do different jobs. For example, liver cells help filter out toxins, neural cells help process information, and heart cells beat rhythmically to push blood through the embryonic body. This process begins approximately 3 weeks after conception, when the embryo starts to differentiate into 3 distinct components: the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. The outer layer of the embryo becomes the ectoderm, and cell differentiation allows it to start developing the nervous system, skin, and hair. The middle layer of the embryo, the mesoderm, develops into muscles, bones, and the circulatory system. The innermost layer of cells within the embryo becomes the endoderm and develops into the organs of the digestive system, the lungs, and the urinary tract. The fetal period. The last 7 months of pregnancy are a period of organ growth and refinement called the fetal period. During this time, the fetus grows quickly. Around 17 to 20 weeks after conception, lanugo and vernix develop, Verhav and Lapin, 2018. Vernix is a white cheese-like substance that helps protect the skin from chafing in the amniotic fluid. Lanugo is a soft, thin hair that helps vernix stick to the skin of the fetus, in addition to helping protect the skin itself. Both lanugo and vernix usually disappear between the 33rd and 36th weeks of pregnancy. Verhav and Lapin, 2018. Growth occurs in several directions, both prenatally and after birth. Growth that occurs from head to feet is called cephalocaudal growth, whereas proximodistal growth occurs from the center of body outward. Cephalocaudal growth allows the fetus to grow longer, whereas proximodistal growth is exemplified by infants being able to control their arm movements before their fingers. In mastospecific growth, large movements and structures develop before smaller or more specified movements and structures. The age of viability. The more time the fetus spends inside the womb, the greater its chance of survival. The age of viability is the age at which a fetus born prematurely, before the 37th week of pregnancy, may have a chance of survival outside the womb, usually with intensive medical intervention. Zhang and Li, 2022. In the United States, the earliest age of viability is generally considered to be the 25th week of pregnancy. However, the age of viability has changed over the years and is not the same from country to country. Medical systems and resources vary from place to place. Not all neonatal intensive care units, NICUs, can handle babies born at or before 25 weeks of gestation. Extremely premature babies require extensive medical care to survive and may also have long-term cognitive and/or physical issues. The earliest known surviving infant was born at 21 weeks gestation. Others have survived after being born at 22 weeks gestation. All required intensive medical treatment to survive because several important systems were not sufficiently developed, including the lungs. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2023. Babies born near the lower limits of the age of viability have an increased risk of neurological and other health issues, including heart and lung problems later in life. Joby, 2022. It is estimated that approximately 50% of babies born before 24 weeks gestation may survive, but none without intensive medical intervention. Thomas and Astalos, 2021. Complications in prenatal development. Sometimes issues develop during a pregnancy that can lead to spontaneous abortion, which is the loss of a pregnancy during the first 20 weeks. Spontaneous abortion, often called miscarriage, is the most common pregnancy complication and is estimated to occur in approximately 15% of all pregnancies. Leisk et al., 2020. Of those lost pregnancies, about 60% terminate during the germinal period due to the embryo's failure to grow or implant properly. About 20% of those miscarriages occur between weeks 6 and 10 of gestation in the embryonic stage. About 60% of spontaneous abortions occur during the germinal period due to failure to grow or implant properly. About 20% occur between weeks 6 and 10 of gestation in the embryonic stage. Spontaneous abortions during the germinal and embryonic stages are believed to often be due to chromosomal abnormalities. During the fetal stage, around 5% of pregnancies result in a spontaneous abortion or stillbirth, the death of the fetus after 28 weeks. Other risk factors include advanced maternal age, history of past miscarriages, certain chronic diseases, and chronic stress. Alves et al., 2023. Spontaneous abortion is most likely to occur for reasons outside the birth mother's control. In the United States, low socioeconomic status and lack of access to health care are associated with an increased risk of miscarriage. Oliveira et al., 2020. A much lower risk of fetal loss, approximately 1.39% globally, exists for stillbirths. Hug et al., 2021. Global public health efforts, including by the WHO, have helped reduce this risk. Hug et al., 2021. Teratogens. Any disease, drug, or other environmental agent that can harm the embryo or the fetus physically, or influence health or behavior after birth, is called a teratogen. Generally, the influence of a teratogen on a body part is strongest when that part is developing, such as during organogenesis. Figure 2.17. After organs have formed, they are usually less vulnerable to teratogens, except for the nervous system, which always susceptible. Limb formation and other aspects of prenatal development show varied critical and sensitive periods for risk of harm from teratogens. The potential impact of a teratogen varies based on a range of factors, including the specific teratogen, the length and amount of exposure, genetic susceptibility, and the quality of the prenatal environment. The longer the exposure or the higher the dose of a teratogen, the greater the likelihood of it doing harm. Some teratogens can cause a range of developmental issues, and in some cases, different teratogens contribute to S-specific disorder. Embryos and fetuses can be harmed by teratogens to which their biological fathers were exposed, as well as by those to which they are exposed via the birth mother's body during gestation. Table 2.5. The long-term effects of some teratogens often depend on the quality of the postnatal environment. For instance, maternal exposure to pollution is related to low birth weight, preterm birth, and neurological effects. Ronnie and Doc, 2023. All these put a developing child at increased risk of challenges to overall health and quality of life. However, research shows that other factors associated with the home environment fostered resilience in preterm infants and had a positive influence on the children's academic performance in grade school. Woods, 2022. Parents or caregivers who actively engage with their infants, provide stimulating toys, and spend time teaching skills such as language and counting increase the chances that preterm and normal weight infants will do well in school. Vaines et al., 2021. Woods, 2022. Interactions including singing to infants, telling them stories, and playing with them provide cognitive stimulation important to learning language and learning in general, regardless of culture. Lansford, 2021. Extreme conditions such as harsh environments or war zones, in which people may face food shortages and tremendous stress, can have a negative impact on pregnancy. Severe emotional stress during pregnancy, including job stress, household stress, such as living paycheck to paycheck, or relational stress, such as being a victim of domestic violence, leads to increased risk for miscarriage, premature birth, low birth weight, respiratory illnesses, and digestive problems. Zhang et al., 2023. Additionally, climate change may be a reason for increased exposure to stress for many people around the world because it is believed to be increasing weather extremes such as flooding, wildfires, extreme heat, poor air quality, and restricted access to food and clean water. 2022. Olson and Metz, 2020. Working to lower stress and improve resilience factors, such as improving social support and prenatal care resources, can reduce vulnerability to these adverse effects and improve health outcomes for both the biological mother and the newborn. Zhang et al., 2023. Nolvi et al., 2022. Males can also influence the health of the fetus if they have been exposed to certain toxins such as lead, radiation, or pesticides, or if they regularly use drugs or smoke. These factors can affect the quality and mobility of their sperm, and therefore the health of the fetus during pregnancy. Ming and Groth, 2017. Secondhand smoke can lead to lower birth weights, particularly with the type of regular exposure that would occur from someone in the same house as the developing fetus. Cater et al., 2010. Likewise, intimate partner violence has adverse effects on the pregnant person, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, and on the developing fetus. Agarwal et al., 2023. Factors other than teratogens may put the health or even the life of the birth mother, the fetus, or both at risk. The most common causes of such high-risk pregnancies are maternal health problems like high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, the presence of multiple fetuses, twins, triplets, and advanced maternal and paternal age, defined as over age 35 years. Congenital disorders. Genetics and the environment are factors that can contribute to a congenital disorder or an abnormality present at birth. Common congenital disorders include heart defects, clubfoot, and cleft palate, CDC 2024C. Approximately 3% of infants born within the United States have a congenital disorder, and disorders affecting the heart, lungs, or other vital organs account for nearly 20% of infant deaths, CDC 2024C. Worldwide, congenital disorders affect approximately 3 to 6% of all pregnancies. World Birth Defects Day 2023. Global efforts to raise awareness and support families. CDC 2024D. The mortality rate due to congenital disorders worldwide was estimated to be about 7.6% in 2020. Perinatal et al., 2023. The difference in rates between the United States and the rest of the world is likely due to differences in reporting data. Infant mortality rates may be underestimated in many countries, especially those with lower incomes. Perrin et al., 2023. Monitoring prenatal development. Physicians use a variety of methods to monitor the development and health of the growing fetus. Not only do these allow us to observe the development of structures and organs, but some can detect the presence of chromosomal abnormalities. Ultrasounds use high-frequency sound waves to create an image of the embryos or fetuses' developing structures and organs, and are a typical feature of prenatal care in the United States. Transvaginal ultrasounds have helped researchers and physicians learn more about the early stages of pregnancy than traditional abdominal ultrasound did. Maternal serum tests are blood tests typically given between the 11th and 13th weeks of pregnancy to measure levels of certain proteins. Graves et al., 2002. Abnormal levels of these proteins suggest a higher chance of the fetus having a chromosomal abnormality. A test in which a needle is inserted through the mother's abdomen to take a sample of the amniotic fluid surrounding the fetus is amniocentesis. It is done around the 16th week of pregnancy. The sample is then tested for signs of chromosomal disorders, such as Down syndrome, some genetic disorders like cystic fibrosis, and birth defects, such as spina bifida. Amniocentesis is typically only done when medically recommended. During the medical procedure chorionic villus sampling, CVS, a small piece of the placenta is removed to test for chromosomal and genetic abnormalities or defects. If necessary, it is performed in the first trimester. Like amniocentesis, CVS carries risks, including infection, limb deficiency, and/or miscarriage. Olney et al., 1995. Behaviors for a healthy pregnancy. A healthy pregnancy is never guaranteed, though certain prenatal behaviors and choices can improve the odds of having a healthy and safe experience. The person planning to carry the pregnancy should strive to maintain a healthy diet with sufficient levels of the macronutrients and micronutrients that support a healthy pregnancy. Macronutrients, including carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, provide the energy, protein, and fatty acids needed, while micronutrients provide the vitamins and minerals. Musa et al., 2019. For example, folate is a B vitamin particularly important to fetal development and readily available in leafy green vegetables. Finally, the person carrying the pregnancy can make sure they get enough sleep, exercise regularly, stay up to date on their vaccinations, and mitigate any potential health issues such as diabetes, drinking, and smoking. Finding a trusted obstetrician/gynecologist and/or midwife is also important, and prenatal care should begin as soon as the pregnancy is confirmed. Birth mothers who do not receive regular prenatal care are at higher risk of having a baby with low birth weight. Thorson et al., 2019. Low birth weight is one major indicator that a newborn is at risk of a variety of postnatal complications. Regardless of culture, maintaining health while pregnant and getting regular prenatal care decrease the chances of having a baby with low birth weight. Khan et al. 2019, Yo et al. 2019. During prenatal visits, the obstetrician will check the vital signs of the pregnant person and the fetus to help assess the health of both. The pregnant person's weight is also noted to ensure appropriate weight gain during the pregnancy. This is generally 25 to 35 pounds, depending on pre-pregnancy weight. The pregnant person will also be advised on diet during pregnancy, including which foods to avoid to limit potential exposure to toxins like listeria, a bacterial parasite, and the number of extra calories needed to help support the pregnancy, about 300 calories more per day than before becoming pregnant. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2023. Getting enough exercise is also important. Someone who is very active before pregnancy can typically maintain that activity level. However, it's advisable to consult a health professional if starting a new exercise routine after becoming pregnant. Avoiding excessive stress matters too, as does preparing for the home arrival of the baby. Emily and Omar are expecting a baby in a few short months. As their due date approaches, they discuss options for the birth. Emily has always been drawn to the idea of a quiet birth at home, accompanied by a midwife. Omar, on the other hand, expresses anxiety about this option and would feel safer with a hospital birth. After all, what if something goes wrong? Wouldn't Emily want a doctor in such a situation? The couple weighs the pros and cons of each option and arrives at a compromise. Emily will plan to give birth at home with the support of a midwife, but will switch to the hospital if any complications arise. Luckily, when the time comes, Emily's labor is uncomplicated, and the couple marvel at the beauty of their newborn in the comfort of their home. They are grateful for the compromise they reached. The birth was a journey that blended the intimacy of home with the safety net of the hospital, creating a unique and special experience for them. Pregnancy can be an exciting experience, although the actual birth may not be the first thing on parents' minds when they discover that they're expecting. Like Emily and Omar, parents need to consider where the birth might take place and who may be present. Figure 2.18. Medications to ease labor pain are available, but natural childbirth, without the use of medication, is also an option. Doctors, midwives, and doulas can all be present at a birth, along with partners and supportive friends or family members. A baby's arrival can also be a more private experience. Regardless, childbirth can cause anxiety or fear. Understanding the birthing process, the signs that labor has started, and where and how birth can occur can help expectant parents prepare. The birth process. The process of giving birth starts approximately 2 weeks before the big event, with changes in birth hormone levels, including oxytocin. The most common observable first sign of labor is contractions. Contractions may be true contractions, or may include Braxton Hicks contractions, also called false labor. Rains and Cooper, 2023. Braxton Hicks contractions are typically not painful and may help prepare the body for the process of labor. Though it occurs before labor in only a minority of cases, another sign that birth is approaching is the rupture of the amniotic sac membranes, often called water breaking. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2020. The mucus plug, which serves as a barrier between the developing fetus and the vagina and prevents bacteria and other contaminants from entering the uterus, may also be dislodged. Once the cervix starts to dilate, the mucus plug may be released, and amniotic fluid begins to leak out. Though the exact mechanisms underlying the timing of birth are still not completely understood, the process includes hormone-mediated physiological changes that ready both the pregnant person and the fetus for the event. Hutchinson et al., 2023. One such hormone is oxytocin, Walter et al., 2021, which plays a role in many behaviors, including initiating labor and forming bonds with others. In fact, when labor is medically induced, started early, birth mothers are often given a synthetic form of oxytocin, called pitocin, which helps start the contractions that allow the fetus to be born. Birth mothers may also have an amniotomy, in which their water is broken manually to speed labor and reduce the likelihood of surgical intervention. DeVivo et al., 2019. Labor may be induced for several reasons, including to avoid an overdue pregnancy. After 40 weeks, the fetus and birth mother both face potential complications, including more difficult and longer labor, injury during the birth process, and low blood sugar in the newborn. Simjak et al., 2022. Labor may also be induced if medical issues like problems with the placenta, such as placental separation, arise that don't require an emergency cesarean delivery. Regardless of whether labor begins on its own or is induced, The process of giving birth has 3 stages: dilation, active labor, and afterbirth delivery. Stage 1. Dilation. The first stage of labor is marked by 2 different types of contractions, both of which allow dilation, opening, and effacement, thinning, of the cervix to occur. Figure 2.19. Early contractions are irregular and infrequent and occur before the cervix dilates to 6 centimeters. Active contractions are more frequent and powerful and last longer. The cervix dilates to approximately 10 centimeters during labor to allow the fetus to pass through the birth canal. Hormones including estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, and prostaglandins are released to soften the cervix so that it can dilate and efface. Walter et al., 2021. The amniotic sac usually ruptures during the first stage, often due to the fetus's head placing extra pressure on it. If active labor, the second stage, doesn't start naturally within the next 24 hours, the birth mother may require a cesarean delivery through a surgical incision in the abdomen, because the fetus no longer has enough amniotic fluid surrounding it to survive. Abrowski et al., 2016. Though the duration of each stage of labor varies, the first is typically the longest. On average, it takes several hours, and it can be as long as 20 hours before the second stage starts. Hutchinson et al., 2023. The first stage may be shorter for subsequent births. Stage 2. Active labor. The second stage of labor, called active labor, doesn't start until the cervix is fully effaced, 100%, and dilated to 10 centimeters, figure 2.20. In this stage, the birth mother will be asked to push downward through the peak of the contractions to help the baby move through the birth canal quickly and assist with delivery. Contractions may last up to a minute each and occur less than 5 minutes apart, Rains and Cooper, 2023. Crowning occurs when the top of the baby's head appears and is about to come out. Occasionally, an incision called an episiotomy will be made to increase the size of the vaginal opening and help the baby's head and shoulders emerge, though many medical professionals avoid this practice. Jiang et al., 2017. Both episiotomy and tearing often require stitches to repair the vaginal opening after birth. If necessary, doctors may use forceps or vacuum suction to help hasten the delivery of the baby. Typically, the head of the fetus passes through the vaginal opening first, followed by the shoulders and then the rest of the newborn, figure 2.21. A fetus that has not moved to a head-first position in the uterus by 36 weeks is at risk for a breech birth, Kluver et al., 2015, in which the feet or buttocks appear first. Because this position increases the chance of complications during the birth process, a cesarean delivery may be needed if doctors cannot get the baby into proper birth position using drugs or other maneuvers. Kluver et al., 2015. Stage 3. Afterbirth delivery. Once the fetus has been born, the placenta, the fetus's source of nutrients and oxygen, is no longer needed. During the last stage of labor, therefore, the placenta is expelled. Figure 2.22. This process may last between 5 and 30 minutes and requires a few final contractions that separate the placenta from the uterus and help eject it. Hutchinson et al., 2023. If the placenta is not fully expelled, medical intervention may be necessary to remove the placenta, because its retention can cause serious complications, including infection and excessive blood loss. In many Western countries, hospital staff dispose of the placenta after it has been expelled. However, in some cultures, it has significant cultural value, and it may be buried, consumed, or turned into memorabilia. Moetti et al., 2023.1. Childbirth options. The end goal of labor is to successfully deliver a healthy infant. But there are innumerable combinations of circumstances and ways in which that can happen. Decisions about how to give birth, where to give birth, whether it can be scheduled, how much medical intervention will be available or is desired, and how best to deal with the discomfort associated with childbirth have led to a wide variety of options. Birthing positions around the world. Various birthing positions are popular around the world, including standing upright, sitting, kneeling on all fours, lying on the side, and the most widely known, lying on the back, called the supine position. Giving birth while squatting, kneeling, or standing is believed to reduce pain and increase the ease of delivery, because these positions rely on gravity to help the fetus complete the journey through the birth canal. Berta et al., 2019, Peters et al., 2021, Satone, 2023. Before the 17th century, giving birth in an upright position was the most common method in Western countries, Cetone, 2023.2. Today, the supine position is most frequently used in the United States, and it is also growing more prevalent in countries where medicine is becoming westernized and births are taking place primarily in hospitals. However, this position may extend the pain associated with giving birth and increase complications. Cetone, 2023.3. Most recently, midwives and other professionals in the United States and other countries have started educating pregnant people and medical staff about the advantages of alternate childbirth positions. Alternatives to the supine position tend to be more common in countries like Uganda, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Nepal, and Peru, where more births occur in the home. Benampaka et al. 2015, Peters et al. 2021, Regasa et al. 2022. In Nepal, mothers often give birth on their hands and knees. Peters et al. 2021. Though it's difficult to stand or squat during a prolonged labor, a labor chair can offer support when in the squatting position. In parts of Tanzania, the traditional birthing position was upright, though most birth mothers, 80%, now give birth in the supine position due to the influence of Western medicine. Missel and Eustace 2020.4. This is also true in parts of Peru. However, the Peruvian government has begun funding birthing centers where traditional upright positions are used to decrease the nation's high maternal mortality rates. Palomino, 2008. Lack of information about the variability of birthing positions may also be a factor. A study from Nigeria, where more than 90% of birth mothers at birthing centers give birth in the supine position, found that 69% believed this was the only birthing position. Okanta, 2012. Unawareness of the options may inhibit birth mothers from making informed choices about their labor experience. Okanta, 2012. The WHO updated its birthing practice recommendations in 2018 to ensure that birthing mothers know their options and understand research data showing that upright birthing positions may ease delivery and reduce the risk of post-delivery hemorrhage. WHO 2018. Vaginal versus cesarean delivery. Vaginal deliveries are generally considered to be the safest for the birth mother and for infants born near or at full term. Desai and Zuckerman 2023, Gregory et al. 2011. In this process, the fetus passes through the birth canal and pelvis during delivery. This type of delivery can occur in multiple settings, including in a hospital, a birthing center, or at home, and depending on the location, in water. Vaginal delivery, when possible, typically allows faster recovery for the mother and improved immune functioning for the newborn. Desai and Zuckerman 2023. In some circumstances, however, a vaginal delivery isn't the best or safest option. For example, if a sexually transmitted infection may be passed to the newborn through the birth canal, the fetus is too large or is in a breech position, the umbilical cord is tangled around the fetus, or the mother has placenta previa, which causes excessive bleeding during birth, or certain other medical conditions, a vaginal birth may not be advisable. In a cesarean birth or C-section, an incision is made in both the abdomen and the uterus, and the newborn and placenta are delivered through the resulting opening. Complications for the birth mother, such as bleeding, blood clots, and infections, can arise due to the invasive nature of the procedure. Cesareans also require longer hospital stays and longer recovery times. Having a cesarean also increases the chances of needing one again for subsequent pregnancies, but many birth mothers are able to give birth vaginally after a cesarean delivery, commonly referred to as vaginal birth after cesarean section, VBAC. Pain management techniques. Regardless of how birth happens, many options are available for dealing with the pain of labor. In the 1960s, the epidural, an injection of anesthetics into a space in the mother's spinal cord to block the sensation of pain, became common. However, nitrous oxide, widely used in the early 1900s, has been making a comeback. Nanji and Carvalho, 2020. Depending on the drugs used and their concentrations, however, pain medication may weaken uterine contractions and prolong labor. Halliday et al., 2022. In contrast, natural childbirth uses non-pharmaceutical techniques to help minimize both pain for the birth mother and the need for medical intervention. Table 2.6. While only some of these techniques are evidence-based practices for pain management, they all can support pain management in combination with stretching and specific childbirth positions. Professional assistance. Many people choose to give birth under the care of an obstetrician/gynecologist, OBGYN. In addition, several types of midwives can support the birthing process. Their duties vary from culture to culture, but generally, midwives provide help and care over the prenatal period as well as assist parents during the birth of their child. Some spend substantial time with birth mothers both before and after delivery, and may even help with housework and visitors, depending on cultural norms. Most midwives in the United States have some level of medical or nursing training and credentials. Table 2.7. Other credentialed individuals who may assist a pregnancy are known as doulas. In the United States, doulas may take certification courses to become licensed, but they do not receive the same type of training as a midwife. Bax and Scrimshaw, 2020. Most of their training focuses on ways to support and assist birth mothers during pregnancy and after giving birth. Doulas may also support breastfeeding success and provide emotional support by being a source of support through home visits and advocacy for pregnant women. Sobchak et al., 2023. They can also be helpful in bridging cultural and language barriers for those giving birth outside their country of birth. Kathwa et al., 2021. Birth locations. Many factors come into play in the decision of where to give birth, including health insurance coverage, economic resources, the availability of nearby options, and existing health conditions or other considerations that may require special care. The question for the birth mother or future parents is, what is most important to them about the birth process? About 98% of births in the United States occur in a hospital. Bax and Scrimshaw, 2020. In some parts of Europe and elsewhere around the world, birth more frequently occurs in a birthing center. Peters et al., 2021. One of the advantages of delivering in a hospital or birthing center is the ability to have vital signs, like the heart rate and blood pressure, continuously monitored. Changes in these can indicate distress or potential complications during the labor process, and medical interventions can be started quickly to ensure a safe delivery. More powerful medications are also available to assist with any discomfort during labor. Another benefit of institutional delivery is the series of automatic health screenings performed on newborns in hospitals and other medical settings. Last, if something goes wrong during the birth, hospitals and birthing centers are typically well equipped to provide immediate medical interventions, and many have specialized neonatal units that undertake the care of infants born prematurely or with complications. However, the quality of care available during labor is not uniform across the globe. In some countries, such as Finland, medical centers are equipped to handle many common complications while also providing extensive support for new mothers. Reed et al., 2021. In contrast, though healthcare is free in birthing centers in Malawi, these centers are often short-staffed or not available in rural areas. Reed et al., 2021. Though most deliveries are free of complications, issues that necessitate medical intervention include fetal distress, a tangled umbilical cord or problem in the uterus, and excessive maternal bleeding. Table 2.8. For some with low-risk pregnancies, giving birth at home is an option. This method allows the birth to occur in a familiar place, and choices regarding the circumstances surrounding the event, such as whether music is playing, to be made in ways that can't always be achieved at a hospital or birthing center. Home births are also associated with a reduction in unnecessary medical interventions. Committee on Obstetric Practice, 2017. But only about 1% of U.S. births occur at home. Bax and Scrimshaw, 2020. Ensuring the safety of both mother and newborn requires substantial advanced planning. Birthing at home typically relies on the help of midwives or doulas, or both, but a doctor or medical practitioner should be available if there are complications. Transportation to a medical facility should also be standing by. Globally, nearly half of all births occur at home. Income seems to be an influential factor, however. Figure 2.23. In most countries, even those whose populations have the lowest socioeconomic status, women with higher incomes gave birth in a hospital or birthing center. Montague et al., 2011. In many parts of Africa and parts of Asia such as Nepal, birth often occurs at home, and the mother may be assisted by a midwife, though midwives' training may be more culturally based rather than medically based, as it is in the United States and Europe. Peters et al., 2021. Perinatal health and screening. Perinatal health refers to the health of both the pregnant person and fetus, from the 24th week of gestation to about 2 to 4 weeks after birth of the infant. Pregnant individuals at risk of complications or of advanced maternal age may be offered more frequent ultrasounds after the 28th week of gestation. This non-invasive test helps the OBGYN or others to assess the size of the fetus, whether it is in breech position or has turned, and whether it is growing at a typical pace. The fetal heart rate will also be measured to ensure the vital signs are healthy. Other important aspects of perinatal health and screening involve newborn tests and care for low birth weight babies. After giving birth, people remain important and valuable outside of any role related to the pregnancy and the infant. It is essential to care for their emotional and physical well-being in the weeks and months following the arrival of the child. Caring for people after giving birth. Much of the focus after birth is on the newborn and its care. However, birth mothers are still recovering and need postpartum care as well. In the United States, they will often have a follow-up appointment to assess their physical recovery, but they also need help coping with the stress of caring for a newborn while healing. In Ghana, birth mothers often did not realize that they too needed care during the postpartum period. Yanupini et al., 2023. The lack of such care is thought to contribute to high mortality rates for birth mothers. Yanupini et al., 2023. According to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2018, postpartum care should be viewed not as a single visit issue, but as a long-term process, with consequences for the future health of both birth mother and infant. The focus should also be on social and emotional health, not just physical health, and should assess the mother's emotional well-being, sleep, and any issues related to feeding and caring for the newborn. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2018. Postpartum care is beneficial in reducing a variety of emotional and physical health risks in both birth mothers and adoptive parents. Lopez Gonzalez and Koparapu, 2022. Mott et al., 2011. Newborn tests. In many Western countries, newborns delivered in a medical facility will be screened for various diseases and conditions, including genetic and metabolic disorders, usually within the first 2 days of life. For example, blood tests and hearing tests are often common screenings, as well as screening for congenital heart issues. The first test administered to a newborn is the APGAR test. The APGAR test is typically given 1 minute after birth, and then again at 5 minutes after birth. This test assesses how stable an infant is after going through the birth process by measuring 5 aspects of newborn functioning: reflex irritability, activity, heart rate, pulse, muscle tone, grimace, body color, appearance, and respiratory effort, figure 2.24. A total score over 7 is considered good, and most newborns score between 7 and 9, with very few achieving 10. A score between 4 and 6 may require intervention for the newborn. Scores below 4 require care because they mean the newborn is not in good condition. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2015. The APGAR test has limits, however. It detects only major neurological problems, not subtle ones, and scores are based on one moment in time. They can also be influenced by other factors, such as how sedated or medicated the birth mother is, which affects the newborn, and whether there was birth trauma such as anoxia, oxygen deprivation. American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, 2015. APGAR scoring of appearance, which helps determine if a healthy amount of oxygen is flowing in the blood, may also be more difficult to assess on newborns with a darker skin tone. Some guidelines therefore suggest measuring oxygen saturation directly with a pulse oximeter. Furness et al., 2024. The Neonatal Behavioral Assessment Scale, or NBAS, is most often given by a pediatrician 3 to 4 days after birth, but can be used to assess neurological behavior for up to 2 months after birth. Brazelton, 1995. It looks at 28 factors related to behavior, including reflexes, in addition to assessing 20 neurological items on a 4-point scale. It assesses how well infants are doing, shows their individuality, and can assess potential neurological issues that may require intervention. It looks specifically at 3 broad areas: the functioning of the autonomic nervous system and motor systems, how well the infant follows and responds to social stimuli like a face or voice, and infant states, such as being quiet and calm or actively moving while awake. The NBAS can be a useful tool in assessing neurobehavioral health in newborns. Malak et al., 2021. Care of infants with low birth weight. Babies considered to have low birth weight generally weigh less than 5 pounds 8 ounces when born. Cutland et al., 2017. In contrast, a high weight for babies is typically defined as being more than 9 to 10 pounds. Akinmode and Mahdi, 2023. There is a difference between having low birth weight and being small for gestational age. Cutland et al., 2017. Newborns who are small for their gestational age weigh less than the 10th percentile, meaning 90% of infants that age are larger. Cutland et al., 2017. 2 reasons for low birth weight are premature birth and a condition called fetal growth restriction, which hampers the fetus's ability to grow. Low birth weight does not automatically result in developmental problems. Some babies with low birth weight are healthy, and many catch up physically to others of the same age if they have good care and no other health issues or complications. However, low birth weight can indicate health risks, and babies born weighing less than 1 lb typically have the most complications and a higher mortality rate. Yeshki, et al., 2016. Maternal risk factors for having a newborn with low birth weight include the following. Adugna and Worku, 2022. Casey et al., 2020. Not gaining enough weight during pregnancy. Already having a child with low birth weight. Using drugs or alcohol or smoking. Being under the age of 20 years when pregnant. DeMarco et al., 2021. Being of advanced maternal age, typically over age 35 years. Glick et al., 2021. Having poor nutrition when pregnant. Cutland et al., 2017. Lacking access to prenatal care. Poor access to prenatal care and poor nutrition are among the driving factors behind low birth weight, causing it to disproportionately affect babies born to those with lower socioeconomic status. In many countries, public health or government programs exist to bridge the nutritional gap for birth mothers with low income and those in poverty. UNICEF 2024. Babies with low birth weight who have complications are treated medically in much the same way as premature babies. Depending on their needs, they may require being seen by a neonatal specialist, being kept warm in an incubator, getting fed intravenously to help them gain weight, and receiving medical treatments to help them breathe if their lungs are not fully developed or strong. Soleimani et al., 2020. Premature birth. A preterm infant, premature or preemie, is any newborn born before 37 weeks gestation and weighing less than 5.5 lb. There are many risk factors associated with a premature birth, including the following maternal characteristics. CDC 2024A. Having already had a preterm child. Getting pregnant quickly after a previous birth, typically within a year. Having health issues such as diabetes or high blood pressure. Using drugs or being a regular smoker. Being pregnant with multiples. Being under age 18 years or over age 35 years. Having issues with the placenta, such as placenta previa, placental abruption, or bleeding. Having low socioeconomic status and/or food insecurity. Lacking access to food of sufficient quantity or quality. A pregnant person with risk factors associated with an increased chance of having a premature baby may receive steroid treatments before giving birth that help the fetus's lungs develop more quickly and improve the infant's chances of doing well once born. Chun et al., 2021. Sometimes, however, a baby is born early with no known risk factors. Researchers have investigated the relationship between premature labor and socioeconomic status, food insecurity, and stress. They found that lacking prenatal care and experiencing stress and food insecurity were strongly related to having a child before the 37th week of pregnancy. Dolation et al., 2018. Other research has found food insecurity to be strongly related to complications during pregnancy as well, including high blood pressure and gestational diabetes. Doing et al., 2013. Sandoval et al., 2020. Infants born prematurely often need extended and costly care, which may further exacerbate the challenges faced by families who experience high levels of stress, food insecurity, and inconsistent access to medical care. Currently, Black women are much more likely to give birth prematurely than white or Hispanic women. Hollenbach et al., 2021. Skamegna, 2023. While socioeconomic factors such as lower income or disadvantaged neighborhood increase premature birth risks for new mothers, research is also revealing that structural racism is an influential factor, particularly for U.S. Black mothers. Hollenbach et al., 2021. Skamegna, 2023. Maternal mortality rates are also significantly higher for Black and Native American women than for white women. Leonard et al., 2019. The CDC recommends a variety of community and healthcare provider-based interventions and prevention efforts, such as improving and standardizing prenatal and postpartum care, to reduce maternal mortality health risks and disparities. CDC 2024b. Though some preterm births are unavoidable, there are several steps to help decrease the risk of giving birth before 37 weeks. These include eating healthily, getting enough sleep, avoiding excessive stress, trying to be active, even if by just taking a short walk daily, addressing medical conditions like diabetes or high blood pressure, going to prenatal checkup appointments, and not smoking, drinking, or taking drugs that might affect the pregnancy. Premature infants are at higher risk of developmental issues and other ailments because their skin, lungs, nervous system, and digestive system still needed time to grow and develop before they were born. Some may face problems with respiration, digestion, and cardiac health, such as a slower heart rate. They may be more susceptible to infections or failure to thrive, meaning their height and weight are below the 3rd percentile. Only 3 of 100 full-term infants will be as small. Madison et al., 2003. Infants born before 28 weeks are at greatest risk and require substantial medical care, usually from medical specialists called neonatologists, to have a chance of survival. Their lungs are not yet fully developed, and they did not have the time to develop the normal layer of body fat, so they may require help such as the use of a ventilator, oxygen hood, or CPAP machine to assist in breathing, a feeding tube, and a special incubator for warmth, figure 2.25. They must also be monitored to ensure they have enough oxygen in their blood. These infants are at higher risk of having health problems that last a lifetime. Issues associated with being born prematurely and underweight are some of the leading causes of infant death. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Maya and Candace look at their newborn, Olivia, with love and wonder. In the days since Olivia's arrival, they've realized the intricate link between their own well-being and Olivia's care. This is especially true for Candace, who is recovering from a cesarean section. It's not just about diapers and feeding schedules. It's about the quiet moments when they can both catch their breath amid the constant demands of parenthood. Candace's doctor stressed the importance of rest for both parents, so Maya takes Olivia with her to her brother's house for an hour while Candace naps. Candace and Olivia sit outside while a neighbor visits and Maya rests. Both parents find that spending time in the fresh air and sunshine helps tremendously to lift their mood and clear the fog of fatigue. They understand that care isn't a checklist of medical appointments. It's a holistic approach that embraces physical, emotional, and social well-being. In this section, you'll consider how parents and other primary caregivers bond with their newborns as you explore some of the challenges they face in caring for them and adjusting to life after birth. Bonding. The first few months after a baby is born are often called the 4th trimester, because they are full of new discoveries and fast-paced development as the baby learns how to control their body, use their voice, and discover the world. However, babies still need others to care for them because they are not yet able to see clearly, control their movements, or even feed themselves. All the physical, emotional, cognitive, and social milestones they will reach during infancy, and even aspects of social development beyond infancy, will depend on the bonding and attachment formed between primary caregivers, typically 1 or 2 parents, and the child, Joas and Moeller, 2021. While attachment, the emotional connection a child feels toward their caregiver based on consistency and quality of care, takes longer to develop, bonding can start immediately. This is a one-way relationship consisting of a caregiver's emotional connection to the infant. It can begin as early as minutes after birth, motivated by the release of oxytocin, which promotes feelings of affection. Scatliff et al., 2019. If all goes well during delivery, new parents may be able to hold their child right away and start forming feelings of affection toward the baby. Even if not, they will still have time to develop a strong bond with their newborn during the first few months of life. For adoptive parents, bonding is still highly likely to occur over the early years following adoption. Goldberg et al., 2013. A newborn's brain starts to make new connections quickly as the baby takes in the world around them. One of the most important drivers of newborn brain development is the interaction between a newborn and their caregivers. Figure 2.26. An infant's brain will create new connections and attain nearly 90% of its adult size by the age of 3 years. Winston and Chico, 2016. And caregivers, including family, babysitters, and siblings, all play a role in that development. These new connections are guided by the infant's experiences. Interacting, playing, and communicating with infants helps drive those new connections and the infant's ability to learn language, create memories, and think. Healthy bonding between caregivers and an infant can help increase social skills lasting into the preschool years. Joas and Moeller, 2021. Caring for an infant. Newborns require constant care, and this often means a caregiver needs time off work. Most industrialized countries offer some variation of paid parental leave policies, often with government-subsidized allowances, that let caregivers stay home to care for their infant. Employers are also able to add time to the governmental benefits if they so choose. Hernandez, 2018. In the United States, no federal policy mandates paid leave for parents, though 12 weeks unpaid leave is offered, and some states offer paid leave for various lengths of time. National Conference of State Legislatures 2024. Parental leave. With a few exceptions, including the United States and some small island nations in the South Pacific, most countries worldwide provide some form of federally mandated paid maternity leave and/or health benefits. Bipartisan Policy Center, 2022. Estonia has one of the most generous maternity leave policies. Mothers there may take 20 weeks of paid leave and up to 62 more weeks at reduced pay. World Population Review, 2024. In other countries, mothers can start their maternity leave before giving birth. In Chile, mothers can begin it a few weeks prior to their due date and then take another 12 weeks after giving birth. World Population Review 2024. Though benefits for fathers are less common, more than 60% of countries offer some type of paternity leave, though not all paternity leave is paid. Livingston and Thomas, 2019. In Japan, fathers can take up to several months of paid leave. Sweden offers 10 weeks or more. Chijen et al., 2019. Recently, South Korea altered its benefits to offer up to 18 months of leave for both parents. Hanju, 2023. Some U.S. states offer a few weeks of paid paternity leave, but just as for maternity leave in the United States, no federal law mandates it. Providing access to some form of paid leave is becoming more critical as more women around the world are contributing more to their family income. In the United States, women often provide nearly half the family income. At least 70% of U.S. mothers work, and 40% are the sole or primary breadwinners. Glynn, 2019. Black mothers in the United States are 2 times more likely to be the primary breadwinner than their white counterparts. Glynn, 2019. Providing paid maternal leave is an essential consideration for improving household and financial security for families. Parental leave for same-sex couples also varies by nation and also differs significantly according to whether the same-sex couple is female or male. More countries provide the same or similar paid parental leave after the birth of the child for female same-sex couples than for male same-sex couples. For example, the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, and France provide the same duration of paid leave for same-sex female parents as for different-sex parents. However, those same countries provide a shorter duration of leave for male same-sex couples. Canada provides the same duration of parental leave regardless of the sex of the parents and same-sex parents. Wong et al., 2020. In the United States, no federally mandated parental leave is provided. 13 states and the District of Columbia mandate paid parental leave. Bipartisan Policy Center, 2024. What should parents expect after bringing their baby home? For the first few years of life, babies are completely dependent on others for their care. Some of the most important aspects of care include feeding the newborn, ensuring they are getting enough sleep, cleaning them, changing them, and interacting with them often. You will learn more about the physical health needs of infants in Chapter 3, Physical and Cognitive Development in Infants and Toddlers, birth to age 3. But here are a few basics of the first months. Babies sleep most of the day and night, usually around 16 hours a day, but initially only for a few hours at a time. Newborns benefit from getting adequate sleep in a safe environment. DiBarito, 2020. One safety issue, for example, is that they need to sleep on their backs and without soft bedding for the first year of life to reduce the risk of sleep-related infant deaths. Moon et al., 2022. Newborn babies need to eat every 2 hours or between 8 and 12 times within each 24-hour period. Skinner et al., 2004. Breastfeeding, if desired and possible, should start within hours of birth. The mammary glands first produce colostrum, a nutrient-rich substance that is high in protective antibodies. Breast milk appears within a few days. Lactation consultants, who specialize in breastfeeding information and strategies, are available in many hospitals and through organizations like La Leche League. If using formula, parents need to feed their baby 1 to 2 ounces at each feeding. Regardless of feeding style, babies typically lose a little weight during the first week of life and then start to gain weight thereafter. Parents also need to make time to be close to their newborn and interact, including having tummy time sessions with them. Figure 2.27. These sessions, in which babies are placed on their stomach in a safe location while being supervised, help them build their neck, shoulder, and arm muscles so they can eventually lift their heads on their own and in time sit up, crawl, and walk. These sessions also help to prevent flat spots on the baby's head from spending too much time on their back and help their overall motor development. Hewitt et al., 2020. Babies are experiencing the world for the first time, and though they can hear, touch, taste, and smell, they cannot see well yet, or in color. It takes 1 to 2 months for them to build the muscles that move their eyes in sync and focus on objects. And it also takes time for their brain to learn how to read the signals coming from their eyes. Johnson, 2010. With all these new sensations and still developing bodies, babies can easily become overwhelmed and do not yet know how to self-soothe. Pinto and Figueiredo, 2023. Rothbart et al., 1992. It can be difficult for parents to know how to help, but using any or all of the 5 S's can often calm the baby. Swaddling, wrapping the baby snugly in a light blanket. Putting the baby on their side or stomach, as long as they are awake, shushing. Swinging and sucking. Letting them suck on a nipple or bottle. Harrington et al., 2012. Adjusting to a new baby. Newborns do not come with straightforward instructions, and each is unique in the way they adjust to life outside the womb. Still, new parents face many challenges in common. Table 2.9. New parents must also adjust to new roles within their relationship and learn new caregiving tasks. Their success can be hampered by lack of sleep and the need to adapt to new priorities. Caring for a newborn is not always easy, and some aspects of parenthood might not be what they expected. In addition, there can be stress to get it right and feelings of guilt when things inevitably don't go as planned. New mothers often struggle with self-blame and maternal guilt if they feel they are not meeting expectations. Durella and Milan, 2021. So finding support and help is also important. Often, however, new parents do not seek practical and/or emotional help early, and the stress of trying to cope by themselves can build up over time. Feelings of sadness and/or anxiety, often called the baby blues, are common among new parents, and they can also slow the process of bonding. Trigo, 2021. Baby blues is estimated to be present in up to 80% of new parents. March of Dimes, 2021. If these feelings don't fade after several weeks, or if they become more severe, a birthing mother may be experiencing postpartum depression. Following are symptoms of this condition: intense feelings of sadness or despair, anxiety or excessive worry experienced for no discernible reason, loss of interest in activities previously enjoyed, inability to sleep, eat, or maintain a daily routine, feelings of panic, frequent crying, thoughts of harming self and/or the baby. Postpartum depression can disrupt the bonding process as well as interfere with daily life and quality of life for the mother. Hahn Holbrook et al., 2018. It can occur at any time during the first year, but typically appears around 1 to 3 weeks after birth. Hahn Holbrook et al., 2018. Though the exact cause is not known, the onset might be related to hormonal changes that occur after birth, feelings of doubt about becoming a new parent, lack of support from family, and fatigue. Hahn Holbrook et al., 2018. Fathers can suffer from postpartum depression as well. Some of the father's risk factors are whether they or their partner have depression or anxiety, stress due to low socioeconomic status, an unhealthy partnership, lack of social support, and issues with substance use. Wong et al., 2021. Research has estimated the prevalence of postpartum depression to be almost 18% of births globally. Hahn Holbrook et al., 2018. It occurs most frequently in countries with higher levels of wealth inequity, decreased access to postnatal care, and new mothers working full-time, which can increase stress on them. Hahn Holbrook et al., 2018. In addition, a higher risk of postpartum depression exists for new parents living in disadvantaged neighborhoods, new parents of lower socioeconomic status, and Black mothers. Floyd James et al., 2023. Anya Wenyi et al., 2023. Early intervention and prevention efforts also tend to be less available for individuals facing neighborhood disadvantage or racial disparities. Liu et al., 2022. Anya Wenyi et al., 2023. Beyond postpartum depression, new caregivers may struggle with a range of emotions and/or mental health concerns, including anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, following the addition of a newborn. Meltzer Brody et al., 2018. In any case, talking to a healthcare provider or mental health expert can be a wise decision to support a healthy new family for all. It is also recommended that healthcare providers specifically screen for symptoms of postpartum depression and other health needs, both before discharge from the hospital and at postpartum medical visits.